Have you ever wondered, can you communicate directly with spirit guides, teachers, or non-physical consciousness, or even our higher selves? What would they tell us? My name is Kevin Moore, and since 2015, I started to practice a form of communication which is termed channeling. I have been interviewing experts on my talk show to find out, does life continue after we die? And can we communicate with those that have crossed over? With each expert I spoke to, they all had different ideas. Is there knowledge from the past which could be shared with the present moment? So I thought, why not just speak to the non-physical world directly through channelers around the world? And that's what I set out to do. They Call Us Channelers will take the viewers on a journey into the phenomena known as channeling. And my main goal with this docuseries is to bring a new understanding and awareness to channeling by looking within ourselves and asking, is it truly possible that we can all use this innate ability? Linda, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
In beautiful Springfield, Missouri,
Yes.
of all places. And actually, it's a beautiful place, I've got to say that. I've been to a few US cities right now, and it always amazes me that going to a destination and not knowing who you're going to meet on that journey.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a perfect example of synchronicity, this is.
Yes. Yes, it's good.
It's fantastic to have you on. And what is your main purpose, would you say? What's the main emphasis of your work?
Well, probably two areas. One is lifting up consciousness to recognize that we are so much more than we realize we are. And the second one is to be here as a voice for people who cannot get to answers on their own intuitively. Working with Universal Mind, I believe everything is possible. All information is available. The only limitation we have is our own ability to receive that information. And that is a challenge for human beings. It's a challenge for our conscious mind.
Why do you think we feel that we can't get there ourselves? Because we've all needed, both yourself and me definitely, to meet an intuitive reader, call it a psychic, a medium, at some point in our life. Not everyone goes for this, but there are a lot of people where they need it.
Right. Well, I think the reason we don't is because we've sort of lost that skill. I think at one time we used it because we had to. We have kind of gone a different direction in our evolutionary path. We have become more dependent upon technology as our communication. We've become more science-based. In my opinion, this is also can be proven scientifically, but we have learned to distrust it. We've learned to distrust our heart, which is more where this information comes from. And until we get back to a place where we can find some balance in the way that we process information, I think we will continue moving away from it rather than toward it. So another goal, I guess, would be to bring people back to center, where they can listen to their heart, their inner voice, their inner knowing, which is very relevant to all of us.
Yeah, because that inner knowing, it is all-knowing for us.
Mm-hmm.
It is wise beyond the current person that we seem to be right now, and with this, ego complex that we have. But I hate the word ego, right, in one sense. But just with our makeup, the way we are. But when we do connect to this greater part of ourselves, all answers are there. All answers lie within.
Yes.
But like you say, sometimes we've forgotten, or we're purposefully have some sort of contract in place where we're totally unaware that we're having a sort of a divine experience as a soul in this human body, that we really are the human word spirit.
Yes.
But that's a human word for it.
That is very true. I think our spiritual side has become lax in incorporating with our intellectual side. And I'm an intellectual person. I love debating things and talking in depth about things and exploring ideas. But that is something that it's entertaining, and it's also progressive for us as human beings. But that spiritual side is where the depth of humanity lies. It's where our compassion lies. It's where our understanding of life is. And I think as a human race, we have to grow with that before we can get out of some of the sludge that exists in our world today. It's kind of taking us down.
Or is it helping us awaken to what we are? Is all the sludge just another part of the magnificence of opening us to be more aware of truly what we are?
I think it can create the contrast to help us to be aware, yes.
How would we know without it? If everything was just
Yes.
perfect and, and just, which it is perfect, right?
It
But if
is.
everything was just always blissful and happy and there were no challenges, we wouldn't be here.
That's true, and not so much that the sludge is just the challenging things, because we all experience ups and downs, and I think that's just the nature of life. Nothing is perfect. And yes, some of the greatest lessons and some of the greatest intuitive moments of my life have come through those moments when I really truly needed to trust an inner voice that got me through those difficult moments. I think more the sludge is the way that we are not open-minded enough to allow that inner voice to come through, where we become dependent upon our own intellectual capacity rather than our spiritual self.
100%. But we need the intellectual side there. Like you said, you enjoy the intellectual
I do.
conversations, and so do I.
Yes.
Right? And I like to act stupid sometimes, privately, and and do the things that we're told not to do sometimes, as long as it's not hurting myself or someone else.
Right.
Right? I don't live a normal spiritual kind of, in quotes, life. Maybe some people that I've met that are very spiritual. They avoid this, they avoid that. I think they avoid the human experience. I want it all.
Yes.
I don't want avoidance of it.
Right, exactly. And I feel the same way. I remember a time when I was avoiding emotional connections because, well, I didn't want to feel anything that was negative. And there's a certain number of people out there that promote that. But actually, I enjoy the roller coaster ride. I enjoy the ups and the downs because I get to feel it all, and I get to know what my inner self is really thinking about things. Once I begin to accept that my emotional state is just a level of communication inside of me, then I wasn't threatened by any of those feelings. I may not like some of them, but I can experience them and enjoy them. That's kind of what life is about.
It's so true. It's so true. That's my truth as well.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always. I'm not saying things always have to be painful or extreme. Or that pain has to keep being repeated.
Right.
Right. No.
Right.
No. But when we just step back and look at the bigger picture, even as spiritual awakened people that maybe some of the people that I've met in this community call themselves,
Yes.
they love the crap.
Yes.
They're addicted to it. I mean,
Yes.
a lot of the people with this amazing abilities are also the ones I find whose lives are just, well, they're not in a great place.
Right. Right. That's true. And having been in the intuitive field for a long time, since 93 or so, I too have found that to be true. I think that troubled people try to find answers, and oftentimes they're looking for something that is not traditional. Maybe traditional therapy has not worked for them. And often I say I won't get a call when someone's having a great life. I get a call when someone's in trouble. When they have a health issue, or they have a relationship issue, or something is just bothering them, and they're confused and they can't come up with an answer. And I think that takes them into this world, into the spiritual realm, to try to find answers that are not concrete or physical necessarily. Sometimes those are very clear cut, and sometimes the answer is really, it requires a lot of reasoning and change on your part to be able to walk through this dilemma that you're dealing with.
That is so true. And those times when people have gone to someone like yourself, where they've gone through troubled times, as you say, that's the time when probably, is a great time for them to have the spiritual experience, to realize that they're more than their body.
Yes.
And some people go through that experience and will see that and will still walk away from it because they're not ready to hear that.
Right.
But the information's helpful. And for some, they'll never experience it because maybe it's in their contract for those around them to have the experience of being with someone that's totally switched off from what they are.
Yes. Yes, people will only hear what they often want to hear, too. I remember doing a session for a woman once that was considering getting a divorce, and she was asking if it would be better for her to get a divorce or not. The information was very clear. Yes, you would be better off at this time to not get a divorce, to stay with your within the relationship for financial purposes as well as insurance purposes. And when I was finished with the session, she looked straight at me and said, "So what you're saying is I should go ahead and get the divorce?" And I just said, "Yeah, we'll just go with that." It was the only information she could hear. It was the only information that she could hear.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
That even when the information comes to us,
Yes.
we are still in charge of saying no.
Right.
That's a good point, actually, that when you pick up on someone's soul issue, or whatever the solution is that comes through for you, that solution is only as set as the person that's going to take that path at that moment. So what I mean by that is we are in charge of our destination.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're just picking up on, if she continues or he continues in this direction, this is going to be the outcome for her or him.
Right.
But they have the free will to change it because we create our reality.
We do. And also, I think that the misnomer, because we live in a world that separates and divides things, whenever we're being intuitive about something or delivering that channeled message, we often think it's the channeler delivering the message, but we don't give consideration to the person that we're working with is also part of that intuitive process. And they have as much input in this intuitive moment as the channeler. And that's something that a lot of people don't recognize.
So as a reader, or is that how you might?
Yeah, I would call myself a reader.
Yeah. Not only are you progressing in every reading, but the entity or the universal mind is also progressing as well. We just think that we're there to, hands together, bow down, oh, universal mind, the greatness and everything else. And actually, the universal mind finds you and the person getting the reading the greatness, because it's progressing with their progression.
It does, and I look at it maybe a little differently than a lot of people do. I think universal mind is more like a huge mental database that we're all kind of plugged into, and we're all using that. It's all information that's there. So as I'm synchronizing with another person to be able to get information or help for them, and then we're both accessing universal information. So it's sort of a huge interconnected network of, to use a technology term, I guess, a database of past, present, and future information that is all present. So
is it conscious?
Oh, it is consciousness. I think it is the consciousness.
What's another word for it?
Yes. Well, universal mind's what I've been told over and over again. When I first started, it was a very popular time for channeling angels and, all kinds of things happening. And I just kept meditating and saying, well, who is it that's coming through here? And I just kept hearing the word universal mind, universal mind. So eventually I gave up and said, okay, it's universal mind. We'll just go with that. It's a fairly generic term also. And because I work with so many different people, I work with a lot of doctors and nurses and lecture at universities and hospitals. And, universal mind is sort of a very nice little generic term that allows me to not step on too many spiritual toes or religious people. In the way that I've learned to talk with a lot of professionals about this, I think I was sort of prepped in that way to be able to move or maneuver through areas that wasn't just this metaphysical field over here, but to go into places that maybe some people couldn't.
Isn't that interesting that we all attract as readers those groups that are meant to be working with us? So
Yes.
the right person comes to you because you have the same resonance somewhere as they do. That's the best way I can put it. There are so many other ways to put it. It's almost like your lingo is the same lingo as they've got.
Yes.
And groups, herds. It's like you're shepherding your herds, and there's a match somewhere where other people need other people. Some may come to you, and then they may move on to another teacher.
Exactly. It's a different. Everyone has to find their match, their synchronized match, to be able to help them. And trust is such a vital thing in this, that you have to be able to understand the individual that you're working with.
And there's no competition.
No, absolutely none. No. I train people to be my competitors, so there is no competition.
And as you say, universal mind's an easier way in for a lot of people, because when we start labeling, and really of the 50 plus people I've interviewed that are channelers,
Yes.
They've put the labels on, they'll say that, and it was just an easy way just for the that which comes through to be recognized.
That's
but
true.
It has no name,
Yeah.
has no gender.
It's true.
We're very good at that separation, and I think it's a bit like past life regression. There is something that people are more au fait with, because one, it comes from them, and two, it's it's a bit more acceptable in the wider world. With people like Brian Wise and Dolores Cannon and many other people, and yourself, that specialize in this.
Yes.
It's just that easier way in. So very interesting what you say, that it's been accepted, your work, as by a lot more people because of that. Do you think you've done it in past lives?
I believe probably. It's hard to say. I've been told by many people I have. I probably don't divide time in past, present, and future as much as a lot of other people do, because I think we're all in the ever-existing present. So was it past, was it future, was it now? I don't know. I think I've probably worked a long time in really
It's now, isn't it?
being this person that I am today. I just have to be true to that and not analyze it too much.
How much of the information that comes through do you take on board as your own teachings?
Oh goodness, that's where it all began. Was me, getting in touch with me and realizing there was a lot more there than I'd ever given credit for. I was a business person. I was a businesswoman in real estate for a lot of years. And I turned 40 and decided there's got to be more to this than just making money and doing this. And this was kind of an adventure. It was almost a travel adventure, but it wasn't a physical travel adventure. It was an adventure in the mind and the soul and the spirit. And I could journey there, and I started with hypnosis. I learned meditation and hypnosis, learned to go into deep inner level states, and that's where I really discovered the ability to synchronize with others, and where universal mind came in. The beginning stage of an actual universal experience was a spontaneous health intuitive session for a woman that I did not even know.
So how did you get started in this work? I believe it was through regression therapy?
I did hypnosis, and I learned to take myself within that inner level hypnotic state, a deep, deep meditative state, and be able to stay there for hours at a time doing sessions for others. My goal was to see how far I could journey within. And I learned that there was a way that you could remain focused, which is part of the culprit for intuition, is to remain focused on that inner signal. And with hypnosis and meditation, it was honestly my ability came through that to be able to do the work that I do today. It took about 6 years of really deep, deep practice to be able to know when I was in that intuitive state and to hold that state for an extended period of time. Like you see a lot of channelers do, where they're able to clasp on to that other personality or that other voice and be able to bring that in. It took me a while to get there. I wasn't born kind of gifted that way. I had to really work at it. So I teach a lot of people in that same manner that feel like they haven't been given that gift, but they can learn it.
Because we're a soul at our core.
Yes.
So with the regression, I've found on my journey that the really amazing, some of the most amazing people that can be regressed are actually channelers or closet channelers.
Yes.
And you put a channeler down on the regression, it goes a whole goddamn different way.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they can access so many different things, but they're also more flexible, probably. Some people are very rigid, and some people are very flexible. It's like, imagine a dinner party or a cocktail party, and you have the social person that can go from person to person to person and start a conversation with anyone. Well, that's the inner level, channeler that can be flexible and can find all those various inner personalities and universal mind that they can access information from or with.
With everything that you've done in your past, as a business person as well, none of that went to waste. You were meant to do that.
Absolutely, it was a real shift. It was a redefining my whole being. I even moved for a short time to another location because it was easier to have a different location, different personality in a location that they didn't know me, because where I lived was, the businesswoman, and I knew that I had to present myself as a completely different spiritual person, and it worked.
And everything you've learned in the business world, you're applying now to make this work as well.
And vice versa. I had always probably used a lot of that intuitive information early on in my business. I have so many synchronistic stories, and a lot of them I've written about in the books, but they're so synchronistic on the real estate investments that I've done. It's like it was just there, and it was just amazing.
Isn't that a great point where a lot of these very successful business people that we call success isn't what I would term other people's version,
Sure.
right? But just as a human word, that when I see some of these speakers nowadays on YouTube, I'm like, Gary Vaynerchuk, he's channeling.
Yes. Yes.
Grant Cardone or some of these other people, I'm like, they'll deny it until their last breath,
Yes.
but there's something else working with these people.
You bet. And a lot of very successful, and I agree, success is something that I believe is just, are you content with your existence in life? That's a successful person. Not necessarily.
Are you content with present moment?
In the present moment with your life, that's true. But truly, I wanted to have a foundation financially that allowed me to venture out and do a lot of the things I can do today, and that allowed me to do that.
But after doing this for so many years, and myself having struggled financially with this, right? I'm not going to sit here and say I'm the best business person at all, right?
Yes.
But having interviewed in person now so many people, and yet doing this since 2008 and interviewing hundreds and hundreds of people, right? I see the gamut of people that are struggling with this,
Right.
that are very successful, that are mediocre, the whole gamut, the
Yes.
whole range.
Yes.
And I think there is no need to struggle with this work.
Right.
It must
Right.
come from, you say you want to be financially okay with it, but there must be other things in the background you're saying.
Yeah. I think so. What I found is I don't have contrast inside of me between my business personality and my spiritual personality. Actually, if the two can't cooperate together, then I'm in trouble. So I've always integrated the two, and I've always felt very comfortable with that.
So this voice has always been with you.
It has not. There again, I was probably more of a business person, but I was still listening somewhat intuitively. I wouldn't say it was there on a conscious basis. What happened at 40 is I became conscientious of it's not all about me. I decided I wanted to be able to connect. So I'd had readings with other people that were so phenomenal and so outstandingly truthful and honest with me. And it's like I admired that so much, their capacity to do that. It's like, wow, where does that come from? What is that? Can I do this? I don't know. So it was another adventure that took me down a different realm. What I discovered was my heart. What I discovered was my heart had the capacity to be compassionate toward things, and I became a better person just flat out, I became a better person. I became a person with the capacity for intimacy with other people that I had not known before. And that's what intuition does. It creates an empathy and a synchronistic ability with the other human beings, but it's not just human beings. It's with everything in the world. It's with every thought that you have every day when you get up. If you can be in sync with that information, it will never guide you wrong. Never.
And that voice that you're trying to describe there, that will never guide you wrong. And I've had even ex-partners or partner who said to me, I said to her once, why are you so successful at what you're doing? And she says, I always listen to my intuition.
There you
I've
go.
never not listened,
Right.
and it's never let me down yet.
Right.
And I was always like, oh God, how do you do that? How do you know? What if the voice has disappeared? And you know, you think it's in the stomach, and I was told it was in the stomach, and I was like, I don't think it is. I think it's my own voice coming back to me, but I've lost that connection previously. But hang on, no, it's more of a feeling.
It's a feeling. It's a feeling and a knowing. And there again, you know, when I listen to my heart, I don't care how illogical it might seem. If I listen to my heart, I'm good to go. The minute I start overriding that with, you know, overtalk, overthink, when I let my limited conscious mind get into the midst of that. Now, I use my conscious mind. You know, there are sometimes you just need to do the numbers. But at the same time, the numbers are more to satisfy my fears. When I'm listening to my heart, it knows. It just knows. And there's a confidence that I've developed over time with that.
If someone's watching this and they're like, I don't know how to hear it, that feeling, how do I know? What if it's disappeared from me and they're thinking it's just gone, but it's not, has it?
No, it's like saying that your heartbeat has disappeared. It can't disappear. You're just not consciously aware of it. And most of us are not aware of our heart continuing to beat, even though it always does if we're alive. So it's there. We're just not paying attention to it necessarily.
Is meditation a good way to get back into?
Meditation is a great way because it causes your focus to be inward rather than outward. When we wake up in the morning and we go to bed at night, all of that space in between is generally devoted to our conscious way of thinking. When we go to sleep at night, actually it's very free. It's why dreams can be very intuitive. Ask yourself a question before you go to bed and pay attention to what your dreams are. It may answer it.
Dreams are more symbolic?
Yes, they are. And so is often the intuitive impression that you may get, especially if you're trying to do it deliberately. I did dream interpretation for a lot of years before, and that dream symbology was able then to communicate back in images as I began to be intuitive. So it's another way you can become more aware of that inner voice.
Growing up, did you grow up in a religious family?
Yes, very.
How did you break away from that?
It was more just a slow decline. I am one of the lucky ones. I didn't have a negative experience or a lot of animosity about that, moving away from that. I still respect very much anyone's religious beliefs because it serves a purpose to them, and I'm very aware of that. It did for me for a lot of years. I think that I eventually just wanted to know something different, a broader perspective, a bigger view. My parents were religious, but they were not fanatical about it. They were very heartfelt with it, and especially my father was very spiritual. And even though they were rigid within the religious box that they were in, they were still both very, very compassionate people. And I learned, by and large, a lot of my spiritual beliefs from them outside of the church as much as within the church.
I now understand why religion is so addictive as well. Not just all the past lives that are being lived out in the now, because I don't believe it's past like you. I think it's all happening now, or future lives maybe as well. Right?
Yes.
Or parallel lives, or looping lives, or whatever you want to call it. If we keep doing this again and again, even the same timeline, in different ways. That it tells you what to think, and it tells you your truth.
Right.
Where after interviewing in person 50 plus channelers, and every single kind of different truth you can imagine, you're like, well, what is true?
Yes.
And truth, you think, would be true and repeatable. But as you grow, it seems to change when you get into this field out of religion.
It does. And even this field can get into little boxes of niches of beliefs that get stalled and stuck. I remember when I had what I'm going to call my spiritual meltdown. I had gone from a Christian background into more of the metaphysical realm, and really enjoyed what I was learning with this. And at a point in time, I began to question and ask, well, there has to be another level to this, a truth beyond even what I'm learning now. So as I was asking this, it didn't take very long when every day when you're in meditation and prayer and really working a program, till everything melted. And it's like, what? There was zero. It's like, well, it's more like those little boxes, no matter what it is, whether it be an organized religion, whether it be a New Age philosophy, a metaphysical belief, it doesn't really matter. Those are more creations that we have to put parameters around things to understand things. They're not so much truths. And no matter how much I ask for a specific dead set answer for truth, it said, no, these are like little pieces of artwork. These are not truths. These are constructs that our limited conscious mind must have in order to understand spirituality. So as we allow those to just be fluid, we can let go of those and move in from one thing to another, like redecorating your home. You have different pieces of artwork on your wall. It's not so much a truth as it is a tool to enable us to get in touch with spirit.
Are emotions the only true fact?
I think our emotions just communicate what our inner self is, how we're responding to our life. I don't know if there's any greater truth in our thoughts, but there's certainly an element of the human nature that does communicate well. For some people, they're probably more emotional. A lot of people who are intuitive are very in tune with their emotions, which enables that communication to be stronger for them.
Is the emotions coming from the soul, or is it coming from the human experience?
Probably both.
Both. Okay. Yeah. And when you came out of the spiritual closet, how did the family members take that?
I was very gentle in the way I presented it, not confrontational at all, and they were so supportive. They would go into their church even and express how proud they were of the things I did. And I did health intuitive sessions for my parents. And it was all, there again, I think I had really good, loving parents that were able to accept who I was.
When did the voice first come to you? When did universal voice first come?
Well, I was working with meditation. I had started a meditative course, and I was focusing on going into those deeper level states, and I really wanted some piece of information to come through. And so I was asking, but I didn't know how to differentiate between just what I was making up consciously as a thought and what was actually some inner wisdom or truth. So suddenly I began to hear an Irish voice inside. And when it was that Irish voice, I knew I was in touch with something different than just my conscious mind. But it went further than that. I began to understand as I was meditating, I would ask a question before meditation and just learn to receive an answer. So the Irish voice would come in, but I also noticed that if I asked a question that was really relevant, that I really wanted an answer to, it was a more profound and accurate answer than if it was just a random question because I had to do the exercise that day. As I became an intuitive, I began to also understand when I have someone come to me that has a deep need in their heart to know something, they have almost a desperation of sorts, the information is 100% there. When it's a random question, they don't want to really hear the answer. It's harder. I say it's like pulling teeth. It's more difficult for me to get that information because there just isn't enough energy between the two of us. It isn't a relevant question. So there's also that factor in the way it comes in.
What is channeling to you?
Channeling is just getting in touch with that universal mind, which is broader than what we hold as information in memory in just our brain, the physical experiences we've had, the knowledge we've gained, or something we've read about. Universal mind and channeling is really getting in touch with, it can be an energy that has lived, it could be the energy of something that's never been physical, or it could just be some aspect of information that's just there. I think we try to categorize a lot of this because we need that. We're accustomed to that separation factor. And if you get down to energy, it's all kind of blended. And I think universal mind is where that consciousness is very, very blended. And it's just an energy field. So we just get on that frequency.
So what led you to write the 2 books that you've done then?
Well, the first book I wrote, I realized that I needed a book because I was traveling at that time. I was working, I just gotten a divorce, and I was doing this full time rather than the real estate. I own no real estate properties at that point. I was not working in the real estate field, so I traveled the country doing this. So I needed the book. The book was very simple, it was very heartfelt, and it was very direct. The second book I wrote, however, my father was dying of a brain tumor, and it was very stressful. He was home on hospice. My mother had just had a stroke and was in a wheelchair, also home. And I was the primary care facilitator, I should say. I didn't do that by myself totally, but I was very, very, very present with that. When you have 2 parents in their 90s, and they're closer to death than they've ever been before. My father had anywhere from a month to 4 months to live. I started the book because I needed hope. I needed to be in touch with spirit at all times. I needed some place inside of me that wasn't looking at death and dying every single moment of my day. I needed that focus. The book came from that, and I call the book With Heart because it was so inside of my compassionate heart that I was there with my parents. But it was a difficult time, and so that book came out of that, and it is more what I call the nuts and bolts of what I do. It has a lot of research quality to it, but it is so true to what I think, what I believe, and what I would most give the world would be the second book. The first book is a very simple book. The second book is more complicated.
I mean, we all have to face that process of dying, don't we?
Oh, absolutely.
And what's your take on where we go to when we cross over?
Well, I don't believe it goes away because no energy just disappears. And we're energy beings, let's face it. Our battery runs out, the body goes back to earth or goes back to where it came from, but the soul has to progress on. I'm not 100% certain what the afterlife is like, but I know we don't go away. Energy doesn't go away. So we're somewhere, someplace, somehow. I have been lucky enough to be able to work on the other side with people who have just recently died, with the families and such. I can only say what I perceive at that time, whether it's truth or not. It's difficult to know. It's our concept of what we believe is there. I will often feel a strong sense of peace, just a strong sense of tranquility. They're not struggling, they're not in the body, they're not dealing with those emotional situations of fear of death, of dying, or whatever sometimes, or the physical pain that they may be going through. They have released that, and they're not in that obligation anymore to that physical life. So they're in a very free place. I do believe that. I was told once, and this is something that I still question, but that a soul remains as intact as that person's knowledge of their soul when they're in the physical body. In other words, if you're just not really a strong sense of vortex of who you are, then when you go back into that energy field, you may be a little bit less contained. It may just go into kind of scattered sparkle dust, so to speak. But if you have a really strong sense of your spirit, you may be able to keep that vortex from lifetime to lifetime.
I wonder, when I cross over and someone wants to channel me, am I going to be any wiser to what I know now to once I've entered into that which I was already part of anyway, right? Will there be some sudden download? I'm like, oh, my real name's this, and I'm that, and there's all my past, I can see it now because the veil's off. Or is the truth that I've generated on this level just going to continue and grow where I go? Would it even matter? I guess I say it from the perspective of when we say that, let's speak to Auntie Ethel now that's crossed over, is she any wiser to give us any information when she wasn't so wise down here?
Well, I think there again we want to compartmentalize things, and oftentimes the information that she had is not just her. It's her. When we think about that, we think about her memory, what she learned maybe in this lifetime or past lifetimes. When you cross over, are you any wiser? I don't know. Do you have more access to the library than this universal mind? I'm not sure. I really don't have an answer to that. And I'm really satisfied saying I don't know often because I have a very limited thing. Now, if I were to go on an exploratory journey and start asking some of those deeper questions, I might have a little bit more insight about it, but on a conscious mind, I really don't know.
How can people get in contact with yourself?
Well, I think it's a matter of you have to focus inward rather than outward. Focus on your heart as well as your thoughts and your feelings. Oftentimes, there's an intuitive impression coming in, and we think it's our conscious mind. And if you don't know what's going on in the rest of the world, you may not realize that this was absolutely an intuitive impression coming in that you weren't aware of.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Now, if people want to get in contact with yourself, how do they do that?
Yes, it's very easy. Just go to my website, which is intuitiveacademy.com. All the information to get in touch with me, all my products that I sell, my books and things are there to purchase as well.
Excellent. Well, Linda, thank you so much for joining us. We're just going to do a quick bit of channeling now for the documentary, and I just want to say it's a pleasure to have met you.
Yes, you too. You're a very gentle spirit.
Thank you.
There are many people gathered here today, many spirits that have joined us.
It's always interesting that, isn't it? That this kind of conversation, there are so many interested in what we're about to say as though they've never heard it before.
Yes, I think they're eager to give up an opportunity for a voice onto this planet Earth.
So, Linda calls you universal mind. Are you in contact with others on our planet?
Absolutely. It would be impossible not to be, since all consciousness comes from universal mind.
What makes... Would there be other words that people have called you before?
I think people have misunderstood the general rule of where our capacity to think and feel and be alive comes from. We see that it's very difficult to separate the life force energy from this universal mind and the consciousness that comes out of that. We see that whether it be a plant, or whether it be an animal, or whether it be the higher order of consciousness that we call human beings, it is all of an essence of energy which is very organized and very instrumental in our awareness. The more self-aware we become, the more aware we become of the other side of universal mind, which is what one is in touch with when one is in touch with a spiritual side of themselves.
So when I say I channel the one, or the rest of the other 50 plus people that I've spoken to have different names for what they channel, these are not aspects of you, or are they aspects of you, or is it all just very separate in their own out of time space place where they're based?
Separateness is only an illusion in the physical world because we see everything as separate. In the spiritual world, and in universal mind, nothing is really separated, nothing is really different. It is a matter of bringing it into our awareness in a language which is the ultimate sense of a linear concept of energy. Nonetheless, it is a valuable experience to come into this physical world and to experience that linear aspect of things, simply because it defines it in different ways that we can take that information back into universal mind and store it yet again as another piece of energy form that is present. It is much different in universal mind than it is in this physical planet that we experience things. It's difficult for that concept to be fully absorbed in this physical world, because it is so much in contrast in the way that we comprehend and the way we define things.
Okay, so when I say I channel the one, how much the one is not you, but it is.
There is no separation. I am each person that is present is a part of that whole, and that whole is part of that person. Every cell of your body is the whole. Think of in terms of the holographic model.
Okay, so that group that I'm channeling, that is my given to me for my understanding that it's a group, but it could be something quite different to that.
The group forms itself in our own concept, because we must have that sense of deliberate ideas. Since universal mind is all consciousness, it's very vast, it holds massive amounts of information. However, if we're looking for something that would contribute in a deliberate piece of information, then it can and will often compartmentalize itself in our mind as it channels through. Where it deducts itself to individualism, though, is in our own conscious mind, not so much on the universal mind portion of it. Imagine a strainer. Imagine separating the fat from the milk content when you're going to make butter. The milk itself, when it's originally coming from the source, is full of all of the components, but we separate it when we're going to use it for different things. When universal mind ports itself into the human consciousness, it separates itself, it divides itself, it forms itself and compartmentalizes itself, because we're going to use that information, and we cannot contain all of universal mind in the limited concept of this human intellect.
Is the universal mind the same as God?
Yes. It is God. It has full intention of life, and it promotes life. It promotes death as well, but it does encourage us, if we seek after the love that is present within the universe. We see that it is what we have considered to be God. Yes, same thing.
But how can one person channel the energy of the allness of God?
We do not. What we do is we channel and compartmentalize, as has been already spoken about, portions of it that can be utilized for whatever purpose that we have for it at that time.
So this is an aspect of God?
Absolutely.
So when someone that I've come across says they're channeling Source, that is an aspect of Source?
Yes. If they're channeling even an individual, it's an aspect of Source. Everything's an aspect of Source. There is no other.
So when I channel the one, known as a group to me, and I see them around a table sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, that is just an aspect of Source.
Yes.
Shown to me in a way that would be more pleasing to me to bring it through with less resistance.
And in a way that we can comprehend, because we tend to analyze the world in separate entities, and we tend to see information coming through entities, rather than to see it as just a universal mind, and all consciousness is plugged into that or a part of that.
What makes my truth of wanting to see that different to the truth of Linda, who sees universal mind? What's going differently in our past or future lives, or in our soul's plan to do that?
No different than someone who prefers strawberry ice cream as to chocolate. It's just a way that we have preferenced an aspect of ourselves. Sometimes it's the way we have been taught something, but for the most part, it's just a way that makes sense to us. It's a way that we can be in tune or in touch with it. It's not right or wrong. None of it is that narrow. It's a matter of Linda has the capacity to hold a broader view of the universe, somewhat fluid in nature, whereby someone else might need to be more like a hummingbird and dwell more in a specific flower, then they like that. They like the nectar in which that they're receiving from a specific flower, whereas Linda might get bored with that and want to move on and see many different ways to view something.
So we truly are the subdivided portions of the everything having an individual experience. That feels true to me, but that may not be true.
True.
The paradox of truth. It is all truth.
Absolutely.
And it's not true. And
Yes.
it's all truth. And
Yes.
it's not true. But it's all truth.
And that gets very confusing for a conscious person.
Yes, because I can't remember you.
Right.
I don't remember being anywhere except for one day, as I've grown older, becoming fully aware. And I was like, well, why am I aware now and I wasn't before? Where did the awareness get born? Was it just in my mother's womb? Or was the awareness always there and just sleeping?
It's what I call focus. Where your attention goes, that is what you become aware of. So as we shift our attention, one of the few things we as human beings can do, as we shift our attention, we become aware of different things.
So my attention was on being a kid,
Yes.
because that was what my experience was going to be at that time, that I craved for.
Yes.
So you're a portion, or it's a portion, or this is a portion, human words, of what this is, right, of the all. What is it like to be in the all without just being an aspect, but to be fully aware of the fullness? Or is that what you're searching for?
I think that's what, when we go into those inner levels of ourself, we can open up and expand to. I think we get there through our heart. I think we get there through understanding that the world of energy, which is what really the physical world is as well, it's just that our bodies are able to translate it into different images and thoughts and patterns. But I think that going into universal mind or that spirit world, you see things more fluid and very broad. There are no limitations, there are no judgments, there are no aspects of this human element as we want to define things. But one has to be very open-minded to see it from that point of view.
You know, if the source, if the universal mind has subdivided itself, created the individual me and all the rest of us individuals and all the rest of us in the different universes, parallel universes, different planets, different whatever, right? Even beyond our comprehension right now of the whatever, right? Is he, she, it just having a bit of a holiday and just watching a good movie right now as it plays back? Why did it get bored?
I think it's experiencing. If you can imagine, the extremities of your fingers are divided into 4 fingers and a thumb. It's to say, did I get bored so I extended myself into having 4 fingers and a thumb? No, it's a part of me. It's a part of what I have, a concept of me. Universal mind sees everything that exists as part of itself. So it's all just experiencing that. I don't think it's that analytical. I think it's a matter of growth and expansion and growth and expansion. And by creating the form in which that we see ourselves as individuals, it's just one more way that there can be an extended experience within universal mind. And who is to say there are not more than one universal mind? This is the one that we are part of.
Right, you know, if it's been subdivided like this, who's to say there wasn't something beyond the universal mind, which the universal mind is longing to know?
It's so broad and so beyond concept at times, and beyond our fathomable at times. You could float for years in universal mind and never get all the answers.
No. No. And we like answers, we like truths.
We like things defined. Universal mind is more like the artist that starts a project and has no definition as to where it's going to end up.
Could there be more realities just like the one that I'm sat in now? And this one that I'm sat in now isn't the only reality or physical reality like this.
Reality can grow into many forms, and it's always progressing and growing. There are many, many ways in which that realities can exert themselves. If you look at the planet Earth, as we call it, and look at just the many entities, the many life forms that exist here, imagine. The universal mind has the ability to project into the world that we are simply aware of. Imagine what else might exist.
Yes, in the space of the nothingness as well, there is something.
Yes.
I mean, how would I know? And I've said this to many channels. How would I know that this isn't a life review and it's not actually the life in its originality? It's a playback of something that I'm still in charge of. How would I know
Yes.
the difference?
Yes. And the illusion is that we have some charge of that. I think we believe we have charge of that. But in the large picture of things, I think we are a union of energies that are having a life experience. But we are all so interconnected, like the cells of our body are interconnected within our physical system. We as entities or beings are just a part of a very large vortex of energy that has created this experience for us.
And it's like, all the spiritual books that I've read out there, and, of all these so called famous spiritual people who have all these massive followings, I've come to realize that I can chuck all that out the window because, yes, it's perfect for the time when I read them and for all the other souls that will read them. But now it's like, oh, none of that may be true, and the actual truth is way beyond what was ever written in any books.
Absolutely. There is no truth. There's only energy that continues to grow and form new ways of expressing itself. Every day we wake up in a new kind of day, a new energy field, and universal mind is certainly an expression of that. And every day, every moment, every way that it maneuvers and moves and contracts and expands is just an energy expression.
Why come through this way? Why not just make yourself fully 100% provable and known? Would that give the game away, or am I just giving you the answer that I want to hear? What, or was it just more fun to come through this way?
I think that the way that it grew wasn't necessarily a big plan. I think it just tended to grow in that fashion. Universal mind, God, if you want to say that, is always finding better routes. Therefore, there is the progress of kind of an evolutionary means. We understand that physically, how things are altered and changed with every dynamic that impresses upon another dynamic in our energy field. But what we don't understand is that universal mind is that. It is that which is constantly, energetically working and creating and growing, and it's not stagnant. We assume that when we leave this body and we go into universal mind, that it's going to be somehow a blissful, sort of stagnant, less complex existence. Whereas universal mind is actually a far more complex existence in that energy world than what we know of here in this physical world.
So we're so desperate, some of us, to leave this planet because we think it's going to be easy to go and cross over, when actually it's just as much work on that side.
I don't know if we would call it work, because the energies are more blended there. I don't know if it's more work, it's just more complex. Whereas here we tend to slow things down, we tend to make things manageable, we tend to have concepts of that simplicity here. and when we're in the physical body. When we leave the physical body, however, we don't really have obligations or work as much. We have more of a system of energy flow that we just travel along with. It's not so much work, but it is very, very complex, and it's always shuffling and shifting and growing.
Are you growing your truth as we
Yes.
grow?
Yes, absolutely. And to say that it's codependent, to say it's separated, and it isn't.
Is there other advanced races in this universe that you have these communications with as well?
Vast numbers of what we would call expressive energies that have created vortexes of union together that have expression, which is all this is in the human form.
Are they aware of us?
Some are, some are not.
Are they more progressed than us spiritually, some of them?
Different, more than I would say progressed. They're just, they know different things than perhaps we know, or they've grown or expressed themselves in different ways than we do.
So as they grow, you grow as well.
It all goes back to universal information, so it's all present. If one wishes to get in touch with that type of information, it's all present within universal mind to explore.
How do we use discernment in what people are saying out there in the spiritual realm?
It's a very human question, because discernment says that we're going to place some sense of judgment or quality on a piece of information, and granted, we do have to do that when we're making decisions or when we're evaluating something as being true for us or right for us or wrong for us, or the consequences thereof. When we go into a universal mind, it's far less determined. It's more of a sense of imagine putting it back into human form that we might be able to understand. Imagine a strong wind blowing and moving across a countryside, and that becomes stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger until it becomes not just a nice wind that evaporates the rainfall, but it also becomes a strength that it could potentially push over a tree or something. It's very, very strong. Energies are like that in universal mind. They become coupled together, and they become intertwined, and they become complex energy fields that then have potential to do other things, destructive or constructive. But we experience very small bits and pieces of that in our human life. But in universal mind, it is just a vast number of energies that are constantly coupling with other things. As we couple, as our human consciousness couples with an energy on the other side in universal mind, we too become a tiny vortex of information that has a stronger voice than just our conscious mind being here in the physical world.
Why are you coming through? Because if we've agreed to have this experience, why is there hacks like you coming through and giving us the hacks to, potentially see the bigger picture? Because if we've chosen maybe to have the experience of not knowing our trueness, of that we're a soul and that we continue and that we've always been, but to have this earthly experience, why would you come through to spoil that for us?
It's never been denied you. The only part of the human experience that prohibits that is that you're in a human vessel, and where your focus and attention goes. It's always been available.
Is there an agreement for all of this experience that you will be here for us, and that other channels and other aspects of you will be here for us, for others, so that when we're ready, we can always have a lifeline, like in a game, a computer game, to know that there is help out there? Like, we have our counselors on this planet, and you are the counselors for the ones that have awakened, so that we've got someone to go to.
Absolutely, it's always present. Imagine it's a small child that has grown up in a dark room. The door was always open, but they didn't realize it was open. And one day they discover that the door is open and they can go out into the outside, the out of doors, where there is light and trees and birds and all kinds of things. The door to universal mind is always present within us. We simply choose whether we stay in the dark room or whether we exit the door.
But is there great value in the dark room for those who never will communicate with you like, well, not like this, but will never communicate or acknowledge you? Is there great value in the soul's journey for that? There must be some value.
I think there's value in the room, the parameters that we put on our conscious knowledge, and there's also value in moving into the out of doors or finding that doorway. I think that it is most definitely a judgment call for each person. Some people cannot handle the vastness of universal mind very comfortably in their own conscious level. Therefore, they choose to stay in a very dark place or a very limited conscious place. For others, the exploration is the journey of their life.
One thing I discovered on this journey is that I found out that the other channels that I've been speaking to, they're in their own time. I was going to say they're in their own time and space, but they're out of time and space, but they are in their own isolated locality, wherever that is. They do not know of the other channels or the other aspects of themselves, and it's of great value for some of them to find each other in the end.
Yes, absolutely. There is a need for that kind of connection often.
But that seems to be an evolution in the understanding of channeling.
It is. I think that we're always in progress in that regard, and I think it's only a matter of how much we wish to discover.
Are there parallel realities out there?
Yes.
Could you swap the word of parallel realities for looping, as in we've done this all before and now we're doing it in a different way?
Yes.
But you're not going to make a distinction between the two?
No.
That's for us to come up with.
That's for us to understand. We have to have those definitions, but those are luxuries of human language, which puts so much limitation on what the energy of spirit really is, what universal mind really is. Our luxury of limitations helps us to feel somehow that we can comprehend it when it is really beyond probably our means of doing so.
And even though it's a luxury, it's still for me to ask the question that others are not asking or haven't asked before. There must be an evolution and a need from us all or for the right people to hear that information.
I think the fact that you asked the question is an intuitive impression that enables us an answer to come forward. And I think that as the questions continue to come, it is the counterpart of finding the answer, which is a necessary thing for growth in all respects.
And for all of us.
Yes.
Including you.
Yes.
So I think to myself, if this is a loop or it's a parallel and we've done this before, why can't we now think bigger or just break out of limitations that maybe of the way we did it before, be it parallel or looping, and become and know that this moment is the greatest it can be, or is the greatest it's ever been, and we can do much more if we so choose it. We don't have to be so limited in any of our thinking now.
Absolutely. We have to be able to define it in ways that enable us to express or utilize it. That's the only limitation, really. We are at a point in time in our own consciousness to be redefined, I want to say. We're growing grander tentacles out into the energy fields to be able to move past what we would consider the basics and be able to give new insight into how energy intertwines and grows and becomes, how synchronistic things happen, how the energy fields begin to blend and create new energy fields, how the colors begin to change as we see them, because our human body is even evolving as the energy fields that we access evolves. All of these things are taking place.
what is an important message for the audience right now?
The message is really to anchor yourself in love, anchor yourself in the heart, anchor yourself beyond yourself. As we see ourselves as part of a very large whole, including universal mind, and we do that with love and compassion, there is a force of intimacy that humanity can bring into the planet as well as into the afterlife that creates a softness, a glow, an ability to uplift the way that we grow. We can either grow harshly or we can grow softly, and there's no need for us to have the harshness be as harsh even when we're going through troubled times. If we go through it with compassion and love, it does lift us up and enable us to contribute.
I wish I had more time with you to know that. Oh God, as I say, oh God there, oh universal mind, I wish I did. This has been such an honor to have you here. And I'm so glad that you brought Linda to us as well to make this happen. So, with so many more unanswered questions, I bid you much love and thank you.
Thank you. It has been a pleasure. And when you have a heart of service, you can get in touch with Universal Mind at any point.
Thank you.
Thank you.